When you're looking for more and there's no place to go, it's a sequels only bonus show. It's not about sequels this time, you know, it's a sequels only bonus show. Doug and his pals, well, they know what to do, talking about movies without a part two. Looking for more and there's no place to go, it's a sequels only bonus show. Talking to stars with Doug did soul, it's a sequels only bonus show. Sequels only bonus show.
We're the Monster Squad.
Hey there, Doug here. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Happy Monday and happy October. We are here to help you. I know Mondays suck, but I care about you, especially you. And this bonus, it's so good. And this will be our last one for the rest of the month because we're packing it all in. We have some amazing horror sequels that we're going to be covering. Also some amazing interviews. So the interviews will be on Mondays, and then Thursdays will be the sequel. So if this is the first time checking us out, thank you. I appreciate it. So why don't you go to sequelsonly.com now or wherever you're listening, subscribe. But all of our links, all of our episodes, all of our reviews, everything you need, sequels only, it's there. And now, today's a special day as well. Today is my birthday. So you're probably thinking, oh man, Doug, what can I get you? There's nothing really I need. I have everything I need. I have sequels. I have my wife. I have my daughter. I have Jamie, my co-host, and I guess other stuff. But if you want to really do something cool, wherever you're listening, I mentioned already, subscribe, but also just rate us 5 stars, share us, tell your friends. The more people who can hear us, the better we're off. So now, for this week's bonus interview, if you're watching this, you already know what's going on. But if you're listening, this week's bonus interview is with the star of Monster Squad, Andre Gower, who plays Sean. We talked about all things inside and out from the film, the people that worked on it. And we also talked about Wolfman's Nard, a documentary he did, because at that time, the movie didn't get the reception it should have. But years later, it's picking up steam. So he thought of a great documentary to do. And we also talked about him growing up in LA, right in the thick of it, all the child stars that he knew and competed for roles with. They were just his buddies. He was in pretty much all the Fox shows when Fox first launched in the 80s. But you know what? I'm going to quit blabbering, but you're going to hear some cool stories of Andre's TV dads. Without further ado, Andre Gower. All right, what's up, man?
Hey, there we go. Let me make sure if I turn that way, is that good for you?
That's perfect, dude.
Let's see.
Thanks, man. Thanks for taking the time.
No, thanks for inviting me. So I can't see the second half of the shirt. Nobody's
as mean as Gene. I interviewed a guy, you remember Meatballs 3?
Yeah.
Well, we didn't know about it like before we started this. I interviewed, it was like one of Patrick Dempsey's first movies.
That I didn't know. Even pre Can't Buy Me Love?
Pre Can't Buy Me Love, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So this was kind of like the Michael J. Fox-ish, like Teen Wolf. Like they filmed Meatballs 3 in I think 84, and they held it for a couple of years. And then once Dempsey got a little bit bigger, I don't know how they can guess that. Maybe they got distribution. But anyway, I interviewed the guy that played this character called Mean Gene. The movie's like so loosely based on the first one. He plays Rudy. Do you remember Meatballs?
Barely.
So Rudy was like the little guy.
I was young when Meatballs.
Oh, you were? Yeah, you were like 7. Yeah. So it was like Bill Murray's buddy in the movie. So Patrick Dempsey plays him older. It's like so ridiculous. But Gene Simmons' wife was in the movie. Well, his girlfriend then. But
right.
So the guy that I interviewed who worked on a lot of stuff, he was the voice of Beast on X-Men, the animated series. So he told me that they always thought that they called the character Mean Gene, kind of making fun of Gene Simmons.
Got it.
So I made him one and I sent it, and I made one for myself.
Yeah. Nice.
Sweet, man. So I like to find out how people started, and then like you worked on a lot of cool different things besides obviously Monster Squad. Like a lot of
I did, yeah.
Pretty like amazing. So how did you grew up in LA, right?
I did. I grew up, born and raised LA. I am as OG Valley kid as you can be. I grew up in the north end of the San Fernando Valley, so that's two-tone corduroy OP shorts and a lightning bolt terry cloth shirt and your BMX bike and some slip-on Vans.
Nice.
That's when you're really young, and then you get into the parachute pants and breaking days and neon suspenders and and faded out Clorox jeans, and you go through a whole bunch of stuff. But we were in LA, so everybody was always you're always either you have some sort of style or fashion element or pop culture thing that either people get later or not at all.
I would definitely say later. I feel like some of those places, those styles hit like the Midwest. I'm in Jersey, but so a little quicker with like being close to New York, but I can see like in the middle of the country, like they're just getting that now.
Right. They're just getting that now. Oh man, that's pretty hard. I hope they catch up. They're not. I know Midwest people. They've got some cool stuff. I love them. They're the best. Hopefully they're not getting neon suspenders right now. Please just avoid that phase. But yeah, no, it was growing up in LA was, by itself is a whole other phenomenon, let alone growing up in LA as compared to everywhere else. And then growing up in LA and also being in film and TV when you're really young, that just adds a completely additional world. It's not even, it's a whole other universe.
Oh yeah. Were your parents like in the industry at all, or anybody you knew?
No, my sister Carlina is a few years older than I am.
Oh, okay.
And she was. So she started out as back in the day when pageants were actually prestigious and meant something, like little kid pageant stuff. But she is one of the most successful pageant people in the state of in the history of the state of California.
Wow.
She's the only one to win all 3 crowns at different age groups and stuff like that. So in the old school California pageant world, she's an icon. But think of it as you will. But my parents and her moved down to LA because somebody, I don't remember who it was, but a bunch of people said, she should probably be in pictures. Very cliche.
Yeah.
And so she went down there, started off, doing a lot of print work, a lot of commercials, TV, and some feature stuff. And then surprise, here I came. And she's 6 years older than I am. So,
oh wow.
I was 18 months old or something when I was on my first set, not as an actor, but I actually like all of my claim to fames that I have because I have some pretty bitchin' ones.
Yeah.
But one of the coolest one is that my sister is in one of the biggest and most famous movies of all time. So if you remember back in the 70s, Irwin Allen produced a bunch of the big disaster movies. And one of the best one of all time is The Towering Inferno.
Yeah.
And my sister is the little girl in The Towering Inferno.
Oh my God, dude. That's amazing.
Yeah. So she's the one, and Mike Lookenland, who was Bobby Brady, they played brother and sister, with Jennifer Jones and then she has this deaf mother, and Jennifer Jones and Fred Astaire get caught with them in the tower, and Paul Newman saves my sister. That's basically the whole Fire story is Paul Newman saving my sister, Bobby Brady, and Jennifer Jones.
Oh my God, dude.
So I grew up, there was probably no way I wasn't going to be in the business. And, just by tagging along. And then I started doing stuff when I was 5 years old.
Wow.
And,
what was the first thing you did? Were you doing like commercials or?
Yeah. My first thing was a Jack in the Box commercial.
Oh, and, dude, we lived in Oregon for a little bit. Yeah. Jack in the Box is pretty good.
Yeah. And the very first thing I ever did was a national or regional Jack in the Box commercial. And I started doing a ton of commercials because they were huge back then. And that's one of the only things that kids did, a lot was commercials, because there wasn't a lot of programming and a lot of films that kids were, big. And look, I was 5.
Yeah.
So that's pretty young. But, ton of commercials, ton of print work. Print work was a big thing back then because this is obviously in magazines and brochures and catalogs. I'm like in a million catalogs for like Macy's or even the stores that were before Macy's. Yes. But and some of them were cool and some of them were rather creepy. And you're just like, why am I standing around in my underwear? But they were cute underwear, I guess, that were on sale at Macy's. But they just kind of progressed into growing up a little bit older and being getting a chance to audition and being cast in a lot of stuff. So when you start out younger, you have a little head start.
Yeah.
And, that just led to a lot of cool stuff, going into my, adolescent years and my teenage year.
Yeah. So when you started, your first thing was you played in a Santa movie with Fred Astaire.
Yeah, there's a little like 1 degree of separation because Fred Astaire was in Tearing Inferno. And
that's awesome.
This was awesome because that was 5 or 6 as well. Every year the networks have these giant, kind of holiday specials or movie of the weeks, and they played it for, good God, every year on Christmas for like 30 years. It was called The Man in the Santa Claus Suit. You can find it on YouTube, I think, the entire movie. But it was a fun kind of multi-character kind of connected story where all around a central character, and Fred Astaire plays this guy who runs a costume shop, and these 3 different main characters need a Santa suit like that day for different reasons. And my dad was one of them, who was played by the incomparable Burt Convey. And so I can't watch Password without seeing the guy that was my dad in the movie. But or Super Password. But that was cool. It was a very New York movie. It was very Manhattan, but we shot it in downtown LA. My parts. Everything else was shot in New York. My parts were all downtown LA.
So what was that like? Even that, like you're doing the commercials, the print work, and then you get that. Like I've talked to a couple people that were acting at a young age. Like I just interviewed the Chip Douglas from My Three Sons.
Oh wow, yeah.
And I can't think of the name. The kid from The Christmas Story. He was in
Peter Billingsley.
No,
Peter Billingsley or Scott Schwartz.
Scotty Schwartz.
Scotty Schwartz.
Yeah, he grew up like 2 towns over from me.
Yeah, he did. He is a Jersey boy. Yeah,
yeah. So like I've
talked for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
No. So what was it like the work? Like it's kind of, even at a young age, it's weird to say, but yeah, like what was the work-life balance?
Well, what's interesting that you call it work to begin with, right? And then that you say, work-life balance, because that's exactly what it is. It's, most, and I think at the very, very beginning, when you start working or getting roles, the ones that become professional, can do the job and get it done, are the ones that are going to work, they get more roles. And because it's very hard to work with kids. It's so restrictive just on the legal side and the production side and the restrictions that you have, let alone dealing with someone that may or may not know where they are, may or may not want to be there. Yesterday they were great. Today, not so hot. That's the tough thing with kids, especially young kids. And a lot of directors don't work well with kids, or they don't know how to interact with them. But growing, I don't, here's the weird thing is I don't know. It's so interesting because I don't know what it's like to not be in it.
Yeah.
To compare. I always was, even at a very young age. Now, that doesn't mean I only had that kind of industry make-believe world. One of my focuses that my parents always had, and then, I clung to, even to this day, is that you always have like the normal world. You have a regular life that's not industry related. Like when you're not working, go to regular school, hang out with friends that aren't in the industry, play rec league sports, try to do as much as that. And I was always involved in so many activities. Yeah. And if they kind of clashed or kind of intermingled with the industry, I would always be a little annoyed, but you also even understood that this is your job and this is what you're doing. And when you're on set, like, I think it just comes natural to some people. I was always easily coached. I was always easily to be directed. I think everybody has to have some innate natural ability just to be there anyway, because some people are really uncomfortable, reading a phone book or something, in front of nobody, let alone you have to do stuff that's not you. You have to pretend you're somebody else when you're 5. You say lines that somebody else wrote, stand on a piece of tape that some other adult put on the floor, and say words to a camera or another human being that you've just met. And that's a lot to process. So I think maybe I was just fortunate enough to be able to take to it fairly naturally. And, just a lot of support and a lot of cool stuff. And, that just leads to a lot of cool experiences.
Oh, hell yeah.
I just always thought it's not as a detriment or something that took away from my childhood or my adolescence or my teen years or even after. It was just this rad addition that you really only appreciate as much as you should later.
Yeah.
You still know you're doing some cool stuff, because you're aware of it, especially when you get into teenage years, that not a lot of other people get to do.
Oh yeah. And you know what's cool too? I know obviously camcorders were a thing back then, but it's cool like in a way you can, and photographs people took, but it's cool like you can be like, hey, this is what I look like at 12 and like pop on something. It's kind of weird that you can do that, but
It
you
is
have that
different.
opportunity.
Well, it depends on, if you had a dad that had a 16 millimeter and family videos or slideshows, with your parents at summer break or vacation or the family reunion or something. And everybody takes photos,
Yeah.
Now we take a ton, but to have your kind of life memorialized or immortalized on moving screen, on moving pictures or film or video is very unique. That's a very different thing. Again, I don't know what it's like to not have it, so I don't really know what I'm not missing.
Yeah. Did you ever take any acting classes along the way?
Sure. Yeah. Every once in a while, especially when you're young, you take some, there's always a handful of classes or people or instructors or group things. I didn't take much. I worked with some individuals every once in a while, but group class and things like that, even when I was a kid, I just wasn't, that's where I wasn't comfortable.
Yeah.
I can admit that now. I didn't, because to me, that was fake acting. That was acting for the sake of acting so someone could tell you how to do it differently or that you weren't doing it well. Now, I don't discount or discredit acting class or cold reading class or scene study or working with somebody like that, because I actually, I've done that for people on the other side. And I think it certainly helps and it's beneficial. I think, look, if you have an audition or a scene to shoot, to go off with, to do it with someone that knows what they're doing or give you feedback, invaluable. I mean, that's certainly valuable. You shouldn't, unless you're really good, you shouldn't really do it all on your own if you have an opportunity to maybe just bounce an idea off somebody.
Yeah.
But like class, that's really weird. I mean, I remember being in, there's a couple different ones, but one sticks out, this guy who, was, well known at the time and had the studio, in like converted the garage, which was kind of cool, and had theater seats and a stage. And we'd go there on Wednesday nights or whatever it was. And that's really funny because that's where I was uncomfortable. Like, I just didn't like it. I was like, this is like, I'm uncomfortable. This is lame. Like, I know all these kids in here. Like, I'd rather right now on a Wednesday night be hanging out with them and socializing instead of doing something that I may or may not do next Thursday afternoon at NBC. Like, but I also don't want to act in front of this is weird. I always felt uncomfortable in that situation. And I just didn't do it a lot. I probably should have. Maybe I would have worked more. Maybe I sucked.
No, you definitely worked more. When you look at your IMDb, you did something every year.
No,
and
I
it just
did.
kept getting
was
bigger and bigger, like the shows you were on. And there were some shows that you were on that were really cool, like the concept wise. Like the one, it was Mr. President. That was a cool concept. And again, you had a cool dad.
Well, that had a whole even bigger backstory to that. But I'll touch on what you kind of started there. I've always viewed my kind of career trajectory or my credit, kind of path is very interesting, because when you look back, talk about all those kids in the acting class or just in the industry as a whole, any given year, there's however many hundreds of kids in your age range or, expanded age range. And now it's probably thousands, but depending on however many are there. And there wasn't a lot of programming back then or roles for kids, if you really think about it, because we only had 3 networks and some syndicated stuff and some movies. And if you were a kid in a movie, you were someone's offspring, and then you were in and out and you were gone. I always I could be wrong. I've always wanted, some of my colleagues or, contemporaries to kind of weigh in on this, but I think of the whole, I think there's probably about 20% of the kids did 80 or 90% of the work. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because they just they know what you want and you were good, and the cream rises to the top. And there were some really fantastic performing kids in my day. Some were just, fantastic looking, some were funny, some were creative, some were just characters, some were really dramatic, there was, and they worked, and they're still working. And it's kind of the same now, but it's a little different. But I feel like I was fortunate enough to be in that 20%, whether I'm at the second half or the middle half or whatever of that 20%, because I was fortunate enough to get cast in so many things.
Oh, yeah.
What's interesting is I was involved in so many projects, that didn't actually trigger and catch fire. Did a lot of pilots, a lot of series for one season. My career in, let's just say, the 80s alone, which is the bulk of it, I'm the guy that did 5 or 6 TV shows for one season instead of one show that went 6 years that everybody knows you for. And, and then the reverse of that, and it's not just singular to me, but because we're all auditioning for the same stuff. Yeah. Sometimes you just get offered roles or you go straight to network or whatever. And I was fortunate enough to get to that level where you're out of kind of the kind of chaff, kind of world, cool. And you're going straight to in the room, whether they're going to cast you that day or not, or, they're just calling your agent and saying there's a new show and you're the kid or something like that. That's awesome. I got to that point, every once in a while, which was very cool. But I think, it's weird, you see someone that that's iconic or very memorable from a show, and that's the only thing they did, but they went on for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
I did 5 or 6 shows for one season, or a pilot that didn't go, we all did. And we're all reading for the same stuff. And all those other shows are things that I read for or became very close to getting. Yeah. And some shows that that I couldn't do because of contracts with other things, or, making decisions at the time, which is, hindsight's 2020, but you brought up Mr. President. So the backstory of that was a show, when Fox was a brand new network in 88, right? They were launching, and they had like 7 or 8 original shows to launch a frickin' network, right?
Yeah.
So if you back up about 3.5 years or 4 years, even prior to 88, I had done a lot of TV shows and productions that were off of the Fox studio lot, that were coming out of Fox as a studio. And a couple of them were shows that went one season or 5 episodes or the pilot. And they were with big TV heavyweights like Michael Zinberg and a new guy named Randy Zisk, who, has been huge for the last 20-something years as a TV EP. And these were all people that I got to work with, and I would just constantly do stuff with them. And it ended up sort of being a thing where I was sort of in this deal at Fox, and I was constantly doing these shows like, apparently Zinberg, and they were any new shows that they were coming up, I was automatically attached to, or they were, trying to find shows to, create for me as a vehicle, because that's how they do it. And they find someone they like and they try to create it, which is rad. Producers and studios used to do that. Now agencies do that. They're the packagers and the things that are trying to, create stuff, which is a new paradigm. But I loved working on those shows. And I mentioned those because they lead up to Mr. President. And I had done a couple shows for them. One called Fathers and Sons, which is a really cool show about 4 boys and their dads. It was about their relationship. Like, you never saw that. You hadn't seen that show yet. So probably a little ahead of its time.
Yeah.
4 different kind of tropey characters of, a smattering of demographics of suburban youth. And I loved my character. It was my favorite character of all time. The pilot came out, and it was really cool because I got to. My dad was sort of like the absent dad, like the deadbeat dad, like the one that never showed up or always disappointed you, but he was super cool. And it was the star of the show was Merlin Olsen, who was just coming off A Little House on the Prairie, and Father Brown's the current BBC show. Father Murphy. And so Merlin Olsen, famous football player, was on Little House on the Prairie, does Father Murphy. Now this is his next network show. He plays the kind of athletic football coach of the chunky redheaded kid, who's kind of goofy and fun. And then we had a little nerdy kid. And then me, I was the super cool kid. Great hair, leather jacket. I wore rad clothes. Like, they went into the archive from the 50s and 60s of the studio lot and got all these, shirts that were really awesome.
That's awesome.
And a lot of hair product. And my dad was Ricky Nelson, returning from television. So the iconic TV and music star Ricky Nelson was coming back to television. So we shoot the pilot, we do it. The show gets picked up for like 5 episodes after that. Back in the day, it used to be mid-season replacement type thing. And in between the pilot airing and we shoot the next episode, Ricky Nelson dies in a plane crash.
Oh my God.
So there goes one of the heavyweights of the show. That kind of is the draw, because the kid from Ozzie and Harriet, is on TV again as a TV icon of Americana and dies in a plane crash. So the show kind of, we did 5 episodes, but my character had to be like, oh, now my dad's really absent and he's always flaking on me. So we played it that way instead of replacing him. And I just don't think audience was ready for the show. Ricky Nelson Dunn kind of took some of the, the star power out of it. And that was unfortunate. And then we went into another show called Heart of the City, which again was a Zenberg and Ziss show, which was way ahead of its time. But there was 3 kids on that show. And I played the criminal, which I had never done before. So another cool, where I played like this 12, 13-year-old crack dealer who in the pilot is being arrested because I just gunned down another teenage crack dealer. Oh yeah. It was way, way ahead of the time. And starred Robert Desiderio as this, LA homicide detective. And he had kids on the show. And his kids on the show were Jonathan Ward and Christina Applegate. So it was a single dad trying to raise his kids, being a homicide detective, while he has to deal with a 12-year-old criminal that he gets involved with my mother as a romantic thing, and then my case. So it was thread. I love the show. I escaped from prison and everything. I go on the run. God. It's amazing. And great show. 3 kids on that show. And then shortly after that, we do Monster Squad. And then Fox becomes a new network. And all 3 of the kids that were on that cop show got offered new shows on Fox Network.
Oh my God.
Jonathan Ward did a show called Adventures of Beans Baxter.
Oh,
where
dude, I interviewed 2 people from that.
Yeah. Great show. Nerdy inventor kid that solves crime. Awesome show. And Christina Applegate obviously did Married with Children.
Yes.
And I did a show called Mr. President, which at the time I got offered 2 Fox shows. And one was produced by Johnny Carson, being ran by Ed Weinberger, who's one of the biggest TV names of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Taxi, all this stuff, right? And starring George C. Scott, who's never done television. Makes this huge deal, huge contract, big thing. I'll come to television, we'll do this. He plays the president of the United States. I played his son with an awesome sister named Addie Corman, who's came from New York and was really cool to grow up with. And also Conrad Bain was his chief of staff, coming off Different Strokes and Maude, and big TV heavyweight. And then we had a mom, which was Carlin Glenn, who's the mom in 16 Candles, which is great. But she got replaced after season 1 because the show was guaranteed to go 2 seasons. It was starring all these huge people. They even brought in Madeline Kahn in season 2 to be the aunt, the wacky aunt. So I got to hang out with Madeline Kahn for a year. And they were paying, they were offering a lot more money. So it was guaranteed for 2 seasons. All of these, all these awesome people involved with heavyweights. For a kid actor of 14 years old at the time, above scale, which is union minimum wage. It's a pretty good deal, and it's guaranteed for 2 seasons. The other show I got offered, the pilot wasn't even guaranteed to air. It was a little blue, it was a little rough, little raunch, and nobody associated with that show with anybody new. And that was Married with Children. So, but my buddy that I grew up with, David Faustino, does Bud Bundy and becomes a worldwide icon, literally. And more power to him. I mean, that show's fantastic. It broke TV. Married with Children broke television.
Yeah, that show is like that was like the one thing, like my dad, we had to watch all the time, and just such a. I don't know if they would do a show like that nowadays, if it would even work. Just how poor they were and the way they did everything, and
yeah, it was a whole, and that's why it wasn't guaranteed to even like you didn't know it was going to work. And then lo and behold, that's where Fox makes gold. And then of course my show, Mr. President, him having all these problems with it, and George C. Scott's this juggernaut of emotion and rage, and but also a very nice guy. And learned a lot, got yelled at a lot, learned a lot. Banned the star of the show, banned the EP, who's one of the biggest heavyweights of television of all time. He wasn't allowed to come on the stage. It's crazy. It was crazy, the stuff that you were just tangentially involved with. And then to hear some of these awesome stories of these amazing actors like Conrad Bain and George C. Scott, and when Madeline Kahn joined it, it was just a whole other world. She was... I don't even know how to explain Madeline Kahn, because people think when you see Madeline Kahn, you're like, oh my gosh, she's got a good shtick. Not a shtick. She has that energy and that power, like that energy bubble around her. That's just her.
She's just on, always on, dude.
And it's
cool.
amazing. It's amazing.
So you grew up with David Faustino, like around where you were at, or just
Yeah, because
audition wise?
audition and pals,
Oh, cool.
off the set and things like that, because we both lived in the Valley. His younger brother, Michael, is obviously in Monster, he's Eugene in Monster
Yeah.
Squad. But Dave and I were same age. We didn't go to the same school, but of course you're in the same orbit. Like I said, when you're
Yeah.
in that group, everybody. Knew his parents well. Boy, at that time, Mike was really, really tiny or not even around yet. And then I get to, end up doing a movie with, you kind of know everybody. You hang out and you go to everybody's birthday party and you go to, usually when you grow up like in New Jersey or, in Des Moines or in Tallahassee, the birthday parties you go to where the kids are in your grade, in your school, and maybe in your neighborhood, and that is it.
Yeah.
Like I had that as well. And like I said, I didn't miss that either. I didn't not do that. I also had this whole other world where I got to go hang out at awesome people's houses and grow up with all these other kids and go to their birthday parties and their bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs and things like that. So it was just a whole other addition. So,
yeah.
But I love David. He's turned his show that he ended up doing on Crackle years ago was hilarious to me. And everybody from Older Children went on to do, amazing things. And Christina's Christina. I mean, she's redonkulous.
Yeah. And even if you think you look at it's unbelievable the way they keep going, and it was really cool. I don't know. Did you watch the last season of Dead to Me?
I haven't watched season 2 yet. I loved one because Christina, who doesn't love Christina Applegate. Yeah. I also know, I knew her. We're not pals now. Like we don't hang out at Sunday brunch anymore, but like birthday parties at her house hanging out. Yeah. So I kind of know her. So I'm always connected. And then total fan of Linda Cardellini, going all the way back to, even pre-ER days and all that. But good. She's one of my faves. And I think she's great on that show.
Oh, yeah.
But I haven't seen season 2 yet. I haven't watched it yet.
It's pretty good. But you had to think, I think Al Bundy, Eugene O'Neill, or Ed O'Neill, he has it's so cool to see him play the opposite of the spectrum on Modern Family. Like have the money, have everything, but he's kind of the same kind of guy in a way, just without being poor.
He's kind of the same dry guy who doesn't want to be bothered and just let me live my life, but I'm surrounded by all these wacky people. So it's the same guy, but completely opposite. But that shows how talented someone like Ed O'Neill is, right? If you go back prior to Mayor Rich, when you watch his like guest spots on TV shows or, you catch him in some old movie that he's just playing like a detective or something, you're like, oh, it's Ed O'Neill. And you always forget it, but that's the thing with actors. If people are like, wait a minute, that's Al Bundy. You're like, that's not Al Bundy. That's the actor Ed O'Neill. He's playing a cop in this. You also know him as Al Bundy.
Yeah. Or the manager at the donut shop in Wayne's World, which is
correct.
Such awesome. He grabs the camera and he starts talking to it.
Yeah, I mean, Ed O'Neill is one of those guys who just kind of has a presence, I guess. So that's why he works. That's why it works. He just has gravity. Yeah.
So one thing was pretty cool because you had all these cool dads on all these shows. One of your dads that was really cool was obviously Shatner.
Yeah, I mean, right?
What is that? That's insane.
Yeah, they, so for kind of most of the run of TJ Hooker, they always alluded that he was divorced and had kids, right? But you never saw him, or like he would talk on the phone to them or something. And it was so one season, kind of later in the, after TJ Hooker jumped the shark, probably. They decided to bring the kids into the plot lines, into the story, and so they come down to visit, and then they end up staying or coming, with some of the visit thing, and then they're going to move down there and stay with them for a while. And it was a regular audition thing. You read, you get it, you get the role, you show up. And I remember the first day of working with Bill Shatner and Adrian Zemed in a park in Burbank, just doing this like a scene in a park, and I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And, but you just show up, you work it, it's not like, hey, this is my guy. You're my dad. I know who you are. It's great. You're Adrian Zemed. Grease 2 doesn't exist, but we love you anyway. And awesome. So everybody was gracious. And then don't forget Heather Locklear.
I know.
Heather Locklear. But, we did, I think, and I remember the girl that played my sister, her name was Jenny Beck, and, cute little blonde girl, funny, talented, great face, perfect TV kid. Right. And we did 2, 3, or 4 episodes or something. And then like the next we were contracted for the next season as well.
Oh, wow.
To do 2 or 3 because they were going to keep the kids in the mix, if I remember it right. And at the end of that the TJ Hooker got canceled. It got picked up by another network, but they said, we're just going TJ Hooker stories. We don't want the kids aren't coming back. So they redid the thing, but it was a weird timing thing. And this is how the industry works. And at the time I auditioned and got cast in another brand new show. I was unable to do it because I was contractually connected to TJ Hooker, even though I wasn't ever going to be on the show again because it overlapped, I guess, in a certain time. And I didn't get to do that new show, which was Growing Pains, but that's okay.
Oh my God, really?
But again, my, pal, I've known him for years, Jeremy Miller, it was for the younger role.
Yeah.
Gets to do a hit TV show and becomes an awesome guy. And now he's like a chef and like I get to see him every once in a while. And, I moved away from LA for big chunks of time, ever since I was 20, even starting in college, because I went as far away as you could possibly be and did stuff that you was not connected to the industry. Where'd
you go to school?
I went to school in North Carolina. My first school, I went to my first college was called Lewisburg College, just north of Raleigh, North Carolina. Okay. And I played basketball in college. So that was my goal. That was my dream. So, growing up in the business and even in my high school year, it was very important to me to stay connected to sports. I was a good baseball player. I was a good tennis player. I didn't play much soccer up, just before college, or just before high school. But basketball was my sport. That's the one I liked. That's the one I enjoyed. And I was way too, on the short, I was definitely the short white guy. And I just had to work twice as hard. I got fortunate enough with a family friend who, did a little research and helped me out. And because I got laughed at by my high school coaches when I asked them to write me letters or if they would, I'm applying to colleges and I'd love to either, my goal was to just go somewhere. I knew I wasn't a D1 scholarship player coming out of high school. Like we know this. But just have an opportunity, write me a letter of recommendation because I want to go and I want to see if I can, walk on or something. That was just always a dream. Kind of got laughed at, didn't take seriously. No one in my high school, except for my government teacher, helped me. He was really cool. And actually he had set it up and got interest where I could have gone to college where Obama went to college at Occidental, which was really cool. He was a little before me, but that was in, it's in Eagle Rock in California. That would have been really rad. But the situation came up with a family friend, kind of had a connection at this other school. I flew back to North Carolina after after I went on this cruise from graduation and played in this huge team camp with all these teams from all over the country. And it was a big Bob Givens camp. Like all the top coaches were there. And then my coach from my first school came down, offered me a spot. He's had NBA players. He's had big D1 players. He's seen me play in this team camp for a couple games and practices. And he offers every player the exact same thing. He's an old school, old soul, Southern basketball coach. And he says, I've got a seat on the bench that you can have. I've got a uniform shirt that'll fit you. The rest is up to you.
Nice.
And that is all I wanted. And so I showed up, I did that. I ended up getting, winning awards and winning scholarship at that school. I met one of my best friends and teammates my entire life, William Coley, who still lives in Raleigh now, but he was this young kid, tall 6'5" athletic dude from Wilson, North Carolina. And, we became just kind of, inseparable. And we were kind of, we became best friends and best teammates. We became captains of our team, and he and I got recruited at the same school to go play at University of North Carolina, Asheville, which is, I ended up playing D1 basketball anyway.
Holy
so it was pretty
shit,
cool.
Dude.
Yeah. I mean, it was when I got up there that the situation changed, but William had a great career. And I met my other best friend in college when he was already on the team when we went up there. And these are my, some of my closest friends in a whole other existence for me. So it's, I live in two separate, distinct worlds that don't really connect.
Yeah, well, that's kind of cool. You can go back and forth. And what was the reason? Obviously, you love basketball. But
Yeah.
what was it that you're like, I just need to get away? Was it just growing up in the industry, or?
It wasn't. I loved the industry, and it was a rather hard decision. Really, what it was is I also wanted to go to college after my senior year in high school, which a lot of industry kids don't do if they're on something because they can't, or they do and they have to leave and come back, and it's not a guarantee that you're going to have a career when you come back.
That's
right?
true.
I left really kind of at the peak of kind of a teenage working professional career. And literally, it's an inside thing. Like I said, working with kids is very hard. But once you turn 18, the whole game changes because you can play younger, you can still be a kid. And that's where things change. And I left right when that happened. And a lot of people say it was a terrible idea. A lot of people say it was a very awesome idea. The reason I chose to do that is I don't like to play what if.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be 30, maybe not having an adult career in the industry, sitting in a room waiting to read for a sitcom and go, boy, I wonder if I had actually gone to college or if I ever gotten to play, whatever sport I wanted to.
Yeah.
Because I ended up playing golf at my first school too, and golf team,
sweet,
which was fun. But I think the basketball thing was that was my favorite sport. I think it's the best sport. It's a team sport. I like individual sports too, but team sports are awesome. I think it's the best team sport. It's such a fundamental game where I just took to it. And then I ended up learning from a great coach, but I said, I don't want to say what if I didn't do, because I have an opportunity. I can always read for a sitcom when I'm 30 and either get it or not get it, but I can't go back in time and play basketball in college. So that was sort of the decision maker.
That's awesome, man.
Right decision, wrong decision. I don't know. It was the decision. I don't regret it at all because I learned a ton of stuff during that time. That enables me to do the stuff you're doing now. So it's
No, that's
there's no guarantee.
I
didn't want to miss that chance.
No, that's cool that you did that and took that, tough decision and did it. I don't know if you ever talked to Scott Schwartz, but he claims to be a great basketball player. He went to high school. Have you ever played him? Or?
He does claim that. No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I love Scott.
Yeah, no, he's a great dude. But where he went to high school, Eric Murdoch went there, and he told me that he would easily beat Eric Murdoch all the time. I'm not saying that it was true or not what he said, but he said the only reason they wouldn't play on the team because he was filming too much and he wasn't around. But I'm like, Eric Murdoch was a pretty good NBA player with a long career, but you never know.
Eric was pretty good.
Yeah.
No, and look, and here's the thing. Someone's going to say, oh, look at, Scotty Schwartz. No way. Little tiny white guy. There's no way you can dribble out. I was like, you know what? Everybody says the same thing about me. So I would never take that away from anybody.
Oh yeah. No.
I didn't meet Scott until he moved to LA. I think when we were, because he's a little older than me. He's a few years older than I am.
Yeah.
He moved to LA.
I think when he was in his teens.
He was still a teenager, but he was an older teenager. I was a younger teenager. So you're going to paths cross, but you're not going to hang.
Yeah.
But of course we knew each other. And then of course we kind of connected because one of my most memorable, movie experiences is I had to fly to Toronto to screen test for a movie that they were shooting in Toronto. And I read this scene and I was, I think they had already cast the lead who I knew. And they were doing this movie and the scene was, the kid has to stick his tongue on a flagpole that's frozen and gets stuck. And so I screen tested for Flick in Christmas Story.
Wow.
And we flew to, I think it was me and one other maybe kid for that role that came from LA. And then a couple kids from New York or whatever came to read. And then, obviously Scott got Flick and he was amazing as Flick.
Yeah.
And, Christmas Story is almost a perfect movie.
Yeah, I know.
And it nenever gets old. And Peter Billingsley is absolutely amazing in that movie. He's Peter Billingsley. And I had known Peter because we grew up together.
Oh, really?
And, knew each other from the business. And I had done one or two Messy Marvin commercials with him, which is fun. So
it's so cool. From where you grew up, there was so many great young actors just in that area. It's phenomenal, actually.
Well, even in the 70s and 80s, there was not a lot of the kind of traveling or transient kind of kids. You either lived in LA or you lived in New York, or if you maybe lived in Philly, you could take the train and audition in New York.
Yeah.
Right. or maybe Jersey or something.
Yeah.
And I know a bunch of kids that lived in Philly and auditioned out of New York, and one is one of my favorite people on the planet, Seth Green. He grew up in Philly, worked a lot out of New York, but then ended up coming out to LA permanently after like his second or third time to have to fly to LA to screen test for something called the Monster Squad, and then he ended up staying in LA. And but I knew him from that time as some redhead kid that was really funny coming from Philadelphia, and I had to spend the afternoon with him because I was reading with him a screen test for Monster Squad.
Oh, dude, let's talk about that. So when that movie, because those are the coolest movies when you're even older or younger, there's like this cool vibe of watching young kids just have to deal with issues that you wouldn't think kids would deal with, like Stand By Me and Goonies and Monster Squad. It's like you don't usually should see kids in a situation like that, but it's just so cool to see. And this movie, I didn't look at who did the special effects for it, but dude, there's some really awesome effects.
Creature effects or special effects, like visual effects?
The creatures are unbelievable in the movie.
Well, obviously the creatures were out of some new guy named Stan Winston, shot.
Oh, really?
And
sweet.
all the young guys that he had hired to work on this production were all brand new 20-something-year-old guys that had just started. So Stan had just done Alien and just done Predator.
Oh, shit.
And sorry, yes, no, Predator was just after. Because they worked on that, but there was all that wraps up in kind of the same time.
Yeah.
And, if we want to get into the creature aspect and the invention and the innovation that they did to create those practical monsters, the makeup effects, the practical monster effects, like the change and the prosthetics and things like that, changed the game. That really switched the paradigm over. And then everybody started doing it like that. And it was guys like Steve Wang and Matt Rose making the Gillman suit. Tom Woodruff Jr. building the Frankenstein aesthetics after they were learning that they had to create the Creature from Black Lagoon and Frankenstein. They couldn't use the old Jack Pierce designs because they were still under copyright at the theme parks, and Universal initially said yes, and then they said no. So they had to re-envision these iconic characters, which they always lamented, and then they go, but then we got to do it differently. And I always say they changed the game.
Yeah.
This was one of those movies at a time where practical was just turning into other stuff, and it upped the game. And we have, I think, some of the best creatures. And everybody forgets about our mummy. That mummy build from Shane Mahan is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's all hand wrapped muslin and linen, and and then Michael McKay in the suit was great. It launched careers. It created icons. All the guys that created those monsters that you see behind you from scratch, as young apprentice employees at Stan Winston Studio, are all now the icons of creature making and own the biggest creature effect studios in the business now.
That's cool, man.
And it all kind of started with, 86, 87 with them.
Yeah. And just some of the people that worked on that movie, obviously Fred Decker was somebody then, but Shane Black, which,
barely anybody then, except for when his fuse lit, it went quick. And
yeah.
Fred had written and directed a movie called Night of the Creeps. Yeah. Monster Squad got greenlit while he was making Night of the Creeps. So there's a little kind of Monster Squad Easter egg in Night of the Creeps.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In the scene in the bathroom where the handicapped kid actually gets killed in the bathroom, on the back tile it says "Go Monster Squad" and a little graffiti awesome. Art. There's a tidbit for some Night of the Creeps fans. And then he goes right into Monster Squad. And then as Shane had, it was the first thing that Shane Black ever wrote, besides some short stories because they went to college together. Shane came to LA. He wanted to be an actor. Fred wanted to be a filmmaker. He didn't get into USC, which he had to go to UCLA. They wouldn't let him in the film. He didn't get in the film school. He ended up being an English major, but they worked on projects together. He and Shane started, shooting the shit one day about a story Fred has. And he's like, I want to write a story where the little rascals fight the Universal monsters. And Shane Black goes, that sounds fun. Can I write it? And Shane had previously written one other short story that always wanted to be a short film called Shadow Company, which he references in Lethal Weapon. It was about sort of like this the screwed over or betrayed platoon in Vietnam that gets wiped out, but they come back as ghosts for revenge and stuff. It's pretty cool. And but while we were shooting Monster Squad, Shane Black had written and sold his first spec screenplay called Lethal Weapon.
That's crazy.
And that got so greenlit and turned around. It came out before Monster Squad, and Shane Black, they got greenlit and shot before Monster Squad came out, and then Monster Squad came out and bombed, and then Lethal Weapon came out and just exploded as a hit. Created a franchise, which he walked off of. And then subsequently, Shane, 2 years after that, sold the highest spec screenplay in the history of Hollywood, and then followed that up and doubled that like the next year and sold the next highest, the beat his own record within like 3 years, made a lot of money selling spec screenplays, and then didn't work for 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
But Fred, kind of the same. Shane's meteor kind of rose. Fred ended up, Monster Squad didn't do well at all. It was seen as a gigantic failure in the box office, which is the only thing that counted at the time. It took Monster Squad 19 and a half years to kind of, the audience to go, no, we are here and we are loud and we are gigantic and we're pissed. Where's our, this is our movie. Don't mess, please, we must show your appreciation. But Fred, ended up doing RoboCop 3, which was just, RoboCop 3, but that's 3 movies that don't perform, and apparently you go into director jail because those were the rules back in the day.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And that really sucks for someone like Fred, who really is a deep thinker. He really is a great, creative mind, very knowledgeable, and had a lot of stuff to say and didn't get to say anything for 25 years.
Yeah, we're going to cover RoboCop 3. I interviewed a couple people on it. Jeff Garlin was in that. Bradley Whitford's in that. Rip Torn. So the cast in that's like so good. But again, it's hard to write a third or fourth or fifth or to do that.
It is. And I don't even think he wrote. I mean, he might have helped with the story, but like you're a 27-year-old director and like a huge studio comes to you and goes, do you want to direct our third installment of a giant franchise? You're going to say no.
Yeah,
like you're gonna take that call, right?
And what's his name? I can't think of his last name. Peter RoboCop.
Peter Weller.
Peter Weller. Yeah, he dropped out at the last second. He dropped
out.
Yeah.
And I forgot David, the guy that replaced him, who's a big TV actor now. He's on every New York cop show. He's like on SVU and Blue Bloods.
Yeah. Why can't I? But no, because the girl I interviewed that was in, her name's Jodie Long. She has a smaller part in RoboCop 3, but she grew up in New York and she did a lot of theater stuff. And she used to do theater and knew Peter Weller. So when she got the movie, she talked to him. It's not like nowadays you text and people would post like, hey, I didn't get I'm out of the so-and-so. But she showed up on set walking up to this guy thinking it was Peter Weller. And it wasn't. So it was kind of awkward. She had no clue. Story. And she's like, oh, shit. She even said like, oh, man, what the hell? Yeah.
Oh, man, what a great story.
Yeah, because they were like.
It's embarrassing. I would tell that story.
Yeah, but the thing that was cool about that was just the fact that she knew him that well. She said in New York, I'm sure the same thing like you were talking about growing up in LA. Everybody like knew each other. All the actors that she worked with in the 80s and early 90s, I would say like, oh, what was it like working with blank? And she's like, oh, we knew each other really well. We used to drink on Thursday nights. It's like, really?
Right. I think maybe even New York is a smaller, tighter core group than maybe really even LA because it's spread out and not as much goes on. So everybody knows each other. Plus you have theater in New York, which is really the epicenter of theater. And so if you're a serious actor and theater's the thing, it was always weird growing up in LA where it's film and TV and very little theater. And then you meet someone from New York and they're like, no, it's theater first for me. And then maybe I would degrade myself and do a sitcom. And I never got that. So I used to make fun of theater people. But theater is a completely different thing. It's a completely different skill set and it is not easy.
Yeah, like back in the day, that was the first step for a lot of the people I interviewed, like older actors that got really big. Like William Sadler was like, the first thing I did was go to Broadway. And he's like, I did a couple things there. And then I just wanted to do something different because he did it for like, I couldn't believe it. Obviously, he's older, but when he said how long he did it, I was like, holy shit, 12 years just doing different plays. And then he's like, yeah, I want to try to do, and then he blew up like right away.
To migrate out. Yeah, and that's not a singular story. I mean, I
No,
think
I
a lot
know.
of those like that, and I just didn't have that experience because I started out on TV and
Yeah.
film. Um, theater's theater's not easy, and to be a working theater actor is also a grind. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got to go to calls and you've got to grind it out. And if you ever get to Broadway, that's an accomplishment.
Oh yeah.
That's like being in LA and ever getting somewhat of a lead role in a feature film. It is not guaranteed, and the odds are very, very, very low.
Yeah.
And if you know any, if you're good with any type of math or stats or percentages, it is not a bet you really want to make.
Yeah.
But people are drawn to it. I applaud theater people because that is a whole other grind. And one of my favorite people in the world is a New York guy. Grew up in the Village, performing, doing theater, doing side theater, doing street performing, and then he auditioned for a show, became a hit sitcom called Bosom Buddies, and Peter Scolari is a TV star. There's another guy named Tom Hanks on this show, which ends up doing some movies later. But Peter Scolari ends up being the really funny, talented one on a hit TV show.
And your dad, he played your
and
dad
my dad on a show.
Your list of your dads, you should get like a mural of like the Washington, like the Mount Rushmore of your dads, because you've worked with some amazing people as playing your father.
Actually, what I should do is just sit on my car and recreate the Monster Squad photo, and all my dads just be behind me. Like on that. What would be really cool, but half of them aren't alive anymore, is to just have like a round table, like my dads, like my 8 dads. That'd be a cool show. I spoof because there's my 2 dads, which I also did an episode of. But
really, I saw that. Yeah.
But no, Peter is one of my favorite people, and he's always a theater. He's literally one of the funniest human beings on camera that you'll ever be. But he's also one of the most expressive, energetic people on a stage as well. And he's a theater guy. But I'm so drawn and connected to Peter because he took me, kind of under his wing and in his fold on this show that we ended up doing 5 or 6 episodes, and it didn't get picked up. I thought it was a hilarious show, had some really funny people involved in it. And maybe there's too many kids on this show. It was called Baby Makes 5. We had 5 kids on the show. Well, 2 were infants, but some amazing grandmas and Eugene Roach on that show. And Peter played the lead, and it was so funny. And he was so good in physical comedy and delivery. But Peter's a street performer. He's a juggler. He's a master juggler.
That's amazing.
And so when I was 9, Peter started teaching me how to juggle. And so I'm a juggler because of Peter Scolari.
Oh, really? Dude,
awesome. I don't juggle much anymore, but I got better than most human beings. But I'm tied with Peter because I got to do a show that they don't have anymore called Circus of the Stars when I was 10 years old. And I was the youngest one to ever do that giant network, holiday special. And then I did it again when I was 40. So I got to do that show twice.
Oh, wow. Dude,
as a kid. And that's all because of Peter. And because he'd introduced me to those, because he was doing it and took me out there. It was like, look, you need to find something. This guy's athletic. He's a juggler. He's funny. Like, he needs to do an act. And I ended up doing an aerial act with Tracy Gold on the, I was 10 years old. I was the youngest kid to ever do Circus of the Stars at the time.
Oh my God, dude. That's amazing.
Amy Foster ended up being like 6 months younger than I the first time she did it. So my record does not stand any longer, but that was a fun thing to do. And a big part of my life, because that stayed with you going forward with the people you meet and the things you have access to. And, I can go to the main guy's house, who's a famous stuntman with all the circus gear in his backyard, and I can go do circus shit anytime.
That's awesome, dude.
That's just like a lifetime membership to the circus, which is fun.
That's so cool. Well, this has been great.
Yeah.
One thing I like to always ask people, I kind of know the answer, so I'll ask you something different, because you did a lot of the things you've always wanted to do, because you changed course, so to speak. You made your decision. But I see, so are you starting to get back into acting now a little bit?
Over the last couple of years, I actually ended up relocating back to LA about 6 years ago for a specific project that I had created with a couple of other guys that I was trying to shoot the spec pilot as the pitch piece and, launch this TV show, which had some interest in, and ended up doing that. And then the first studio I took it to they wanted it. So we were in we were in the contract phase. We were in development. And that lasted 6 or 7 months and then ended up ending. But in that interim, some other stuff that I created some other stuff. So I've been more into the creative, the development, and producing things. But you never give up acting, because that's that's the easy part. It's also the fun part. I have producer friends and things, that I'll go and work production on my friend's movie that either she's directing or producing. And then sometimes I'm in her movies, same thing with other stuff. People ask me to be in it. I don't do the daily audition grind currently now, because I was busy with other stuff. And really not last year, but the 2 years before that, I ended up developing and producing and directing the documentary. Wolfman's Got Nards. Awesome. So that took about, definitely about a year, a year of production. And then we festivaled, then we had to post, and then we were done, and we had about a 6 or 7 month festival run.
That's awesome.
And then we had this kind of empty space for almost a year, but now that's back on track with, hopefully this will be out very soon. I can't go with specifics, but we ended up in a deal that took 7 months, and that fell through for some reason. Yeah. And now we've got it. So hopefully all the Monster Squad fans that are waiting for Wolfman's Got Nards, stay tuned, keep following, and hopefully there's an announcement very soon.
Nice, dude.
But yeah, you'd ask your question. Like you said you were going to ask. Did you ask it, or did I just?
Oh, no. Yeah, no, I asked it. Yeah, no. Usually I ask people like, "Hey, if you didn't go into acting, what would you be doing?" You kind of.
I don't know, because
you did it so young.
Weird. I did it so no. I don't know. Not the business. I don't know. Yeah. I don't not know the industry. So I got away from it for a very long time. So when I went to school and played basketball in a small town in North Carolina, and then went to a medium-sized town in North Carolina. Couldn't be any less connected to the industry. Now people still knew, you recognize you're a new Monster Squad or new your shows, which was fun. I had a great core group of friends. My teammates knew, nobody cared. They cared, but it wasn't like, you're my teammate, you pass me the ball, and then, we win a game, and that's what we're doing. It's cool that you're my friend that was on TV, but it's not the reason you're my friend.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. So I was kind of disconnected, but I also have a mass comm journalism degree, and I started, I was a sports writer for a number of years. I worked in newspapers and magazines, and, covered sports, and I ended up getting into officiating high school basketball. And so I was a state official for 2 or 3 years. And that's actually something I always look at, that I actually was being asked and groomed to go further and be a college official. And who knows? Those guys make good money, and it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
You work a couple nights a week and make money.
They should do a movie on that. High school referees.
Yeah. Half the people hate you and half the people like you. It's called 50-50, coming out in summer. Yes. But that was fun. I was good at that. I always thought I'd go into coaching because that's something I actually like. That's a whole other grind going into coaching. You have to make that commitment.
That's 24/7.
And you have to give it time. And some of my best friends are coaches. That's a whole lifestyle and a choice.
Yeah.
I was probably, at the time, I wasn't ready to do that. And I was probably more selfish with my time at that particular moment. And I didn't want to make a decision because I just didn't know, because I graduated college, had a couple years of working in journalism, which is nowhere near film and TV.
Yeah.
And especially covering high school and college sports and feature stories in Western North Carolina. Completely separated. And then when I was in that world, I missed the other one, and I'm in this one, I missed the other one. Yeah. And I was trying to find something that bridged that gap. And in 99, I came up with it, or 2000, and I created a film festival that I was going to have it in the city of Asheville. And that's a long other whole podcast story how that didn't happen. But that was something that I thought would bridge my two worlds at the time, and set it all up, spent 6 or 8 months working on it, got it all ready to go and launch, and woke up one morning and had a meeting with the city, woke up the next morning, and my project wasn't mine anymore. Oh. So it's I have a love-hate relationship with the city of Asheville, because it's a beautiful place and great people, and some of my best friends live there, but
the local government,
a little stung for some people. But I learned a lot from that, and that let me do some other stuff that I did, and led to some other decisions. But it took a little time to find the footing. But I came back, and I love being in the industry. I'm fortunate enough to have a history and a background in it. I'm fortunate enough to be something associated with like Monster Squad, where especially in the horror community, if you're a genre fan or horror buff, I mean, that's, that's sort of kind of one of the most loyal and hardcore fan bases.
Oh, totally.
I feel that I'm very fortunate enough to be, that's not the only thing I'm in, but that's, one of the things where I sort of have, it's this weird thing. I kind of have this amazing status in the horror genre just because I got to be in Monster Squad, which is so seminal and important to a lot of people in the genre, whether they're professionals or they're just fans.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what kind of paralleled and led me to my experience of this resurgence of the Monster Squad, for the last 10 or 12 years to make the documentary. Because the documentary is not about the movie. It's not about us as cast, like it's not a Where Are They Now doc.
Oh, good.
And most importantly, it's not a fan doc. It's not a fan service doc of, blah, here's the movie you love,
Yeah.
What it is, the original core inspiration for it was I started hearing so many awesome, unique stories from individuals that were fans that came up to me and told me how their lives were affected or how much this movie means to them, unlike any other movie that they're fans of.
Yeah.
And I thought that would last for about a year or two, and it just kept going and going. And I realized that those stories are a story. And so it's about how this movie that didn't do well affected an entire generation and then some of people, either professionally or emotionally or physically. And there's so many amazing stories out there. I can't cram them all into a 90-minute documentary. But they're out there, and all the fans that told me those stories over the first couple of years of convention appearances and screenings, you're the reason that documentary got made.
That's rad, man. Well, Andre, this has been awesome. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, man. No, appreciate it. If you want to come back and talk about any other thing, let me know.
Totally.
Love hanging out. So I love talking about Monster Squad. Monster Squad fans are great. Hopefully the doc will come out, but I like that we got to talk about some other stuff as well.
Yeah, that's what, it's funny. Every time I talk to somebody, and it's not like I love Monster Squad, but I love hearing like the origin story and like the other things, because most of the time when I interview people, they're like, hey, you didn't really talk too much about blank. It's like, well, that's what people always ask about. And I think it's really cool hearing about the other stories, all the awesome dads you had. And I think you should really do that. Get somebody to Photoshop that, dude.
That might be funny.
Yeah, man.
They're if they all stick around for a little bit, maybe we get to do it. I mean, other people have some awesome dads too, but yeah, George C. Scott, Shatner, Ricky Nelson. That's
Peter Scolari.
Peter Scolari. That's pretty cool.
That's good, man. All right, Andre, have a good rest of your night, man.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We'll talk soon.
All righty.
Dude, wasn't Andre awesome? I really love talking to him. It's really cool, man. Just talking about a choice, a person that's acting every year pretty much since you began. He's always working. He said, no, you know what? I want to go play basketball. He goes to school, plays basketball, and good for him, man. I love that he's getting back into it now. And just the stories and the memories he shared. And I really do want to, Andre, if you're checking this out, I am going to work on some. I'm not the best at Photoshop, but man, the Mount Rushmore of your TV dads is epic. So that was Andre. I'll put all his links in the episode notes so you can follow him, and his IMDb so you can keep tabs on him, because Wolfman's Nards and a lot of other things that he's working on. So don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And don't forget, check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.